We evaluated these options using an Excel model. The purpose is to see would the services meet the fare box requirement, and our analysis showed that there would be a slight, that it would exceed the requirement, and we think that that's really the appropriate conservative approach given all the variables with gas price increases and other increases, that there'd be some acceptable margin. So the recommended fare increase is listed in this chart. It's in your report. One other new fare instrument that's on here, you can see highlighted in blue, we're also recommending a special summer youth pass. So kids ages 12 to 17 could ride the service unlimited throughout summer months for a $20 pass. Other recommendations, we've included a couple other short-term recommendations, which are really to streamline some of the administrative fare collection procedures. And then some longer-term considerations, and just the one I want to point out is that there currently is a very good working relationship with the Imperial Valley College, but we think that that should be further explored to perhaps consider introducing at a later date a special college pass. This chart shows the recommended fares for AIM Transit, which I already went over. And we also looked, as I said, at the fares for those city dial-a-ride services. And none of the fares on the city dial-a-rides have been increased in about 10 years. So we're recommending that each one of them have a fare increase, both to respond to the fare box requirement. Each city has its own fare box requirement. El Centro and Imperial have a 20% higher than the other cities because it's considered an urbanized area, and that is a requirement of the state. This last chart shows the timeline and action. One thing, the first bullet shows that we did meet with the staff, as Kathy mentioned. We met with them 3 different times throughout the study, and we met with them on the 7th of May to review the recommendations. Presented this report back on the 14th to the management committee. Kathy, as she said, has advertised the public meeting today in newspapers, on board buses, to let the public know about the fare increase. And what needs to happen is that the individual cities need to consider the fare increase. But what we're asking this evening is for you to accept the report and, after public comment, to adopt our recommended option 3. So if there are questions, I'd be happy to entertain any on the presentation or on the report.
I have a couple of questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In reference to the increase over 1,000%, originally with 3 buses providing for 3,000 passengers, now we have 18 buses with 33,000 plus passengers. We're still not able to reach the fare box ratio with those numbers, as far as the 13.8%. And then the second question I have is in reference to the Imperial Dial-a-Ride. I know you mentioned that it's considered an urban area when it's combined with the city of El Centro, but I also noticed in the report that the other dial-a-rides like Calexico, Brawley, etc. have not restricted ridership. It's for either senior citizens or those with disabilities, etc. But the Imperial Dial-a-Ride is more inclusive, so to speak, where, and correct me if I'm mistaken, where any member or resident or rider in Imperial has access to Dial-a-Ride.
Right. The Imperial Dial-a-Ride today is available to the general public, whereas the other city Dial-a-Rides are more focused and limit the service to seniors and people with disabilities. My understanding, though, is that Imperial may consider narrowing the Dial-a-Ride to just seniors and people with disabilities. But currently it is available for the general public, that's correct. And to answer your other part of that question, yes, because El Centro and Imperial are considered an urbanized area, they do have a higher fare box ratio requirement. It's a state requirement. Small or rural areas only have to meet a 10%, where urbanized areas are required to meet a 20%. It is a significant difference.
Okay, thank you. And I just have one more point to make, if you'll bear with me. I will support this, and I'll support it even more so. And Kathy, if we're looking to increase the ridership, one, by making it more acceptable and a more fiscal way to get to and from one point A to point B, or one city to another, or going through one zone to another, etc. And with the rising fuel costs and ridership, I mean, people are even considering or thinking twice about driving from Calexico to El Centro, or from Brawley down to Calexico, or from Hopeville to El Centro, etc., for their daily trips, or even thinking of carpooling or whatever. If we can improve the bus stops valley-wide and making sure that we make every municipality aware of monies that are available for shelters, shades, and what have you. We experience over 130 days of triple-digit weather, and 40 to 60% of those days have temperatures that are minimum 110. And so to have people, riders, exposed to the sun and the elements, and then with the reflection of that sun off the pavement, add another 10 to 15 degrees. And so I would want that to be part of this program, and if not, to bring it back to our next agenda so we can look at that and bring all the cities together so we can move forward on that. Thank you. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Let me respond to the very first question that you had, and I basically have one 4-letter word for you.
Hey, wait. George Carlin said 7 words you can't say on radio or TV.
And it starts with an F.
Okay.
It's F-U-E-L. That's the problem that we're having right now. The cost of diesel has gone up so significantly that as long as I've been here, we've never had a fare increase. And every time we've looked at it, we've always tried to delay, we've always tried to put it off, and we've always been able to achieve our fare box. Well, unfortunately, when we had our fiscal audit done in 06-07, it was brought to our attention that we would have 12.8% fare box. So now, because this is 07-08, we're drawing to a close, we don't know exactly what the fare box is going to be, but we're looking at hovering right around that percentage. So at this point in time, we either have to increase the fare or we have to cut service. Well, there's no way I want to recommend cutting service at all because we're doing so well. Our ridership is up almost 42%. Some of that is attributed to the cost of fuel, but most of that is attributed to the decision you made in July of 2006 to implement the 70-minute headways. And people are responding, and they're using the service, and they're getting around town, and they're coming up with very creative ways and places to transfer from one bus to another. So at this point in time, what can we do? We have to come to you and ask that you take a conservative approach and increase the fares. We're trying to put this on the general public as much as possible and allow the senior citizens and persons with disabilities and the IBC students to have the least effect. But we have the ability in future years to go back and make changes to that if we need to. So at this point, rather than cut service, we're coming back to you and asking you to increase the fares in a 2-step process. In regards to the bus stops, IVAG is the overall regional transit planning agency and the policy board. But the way the operations run, it's up to the individual cities to implement and install and maintain and clean and advertise or not at the individual bus stops. So we make recommendations to the city public works directors and engineers as to which are the highest traffic stops, the ones with the most people embarking and disembarking. We know that there's people that are waiting for the bus. They're not waiting as long as they used to because of the 70-minute headways. We hear the complaints. We see the people on the bus. Basically what we do is we try to make sure that every bus has good air conditioning, it's comfortable, it's reliable, and it's safe.
I understand what you're saying, and communication is the key to success, but sometimes that dialogue doesn't continue from the Public Works Department or the city managers to the city councils or the board of supervisors. And so just like our last meeting in May when we talked about surplus funds available for bus stops and shelters, when I took that back to the city of Calexico, that's in my district, their public works director was like, oh, why did you bring that up, etc. Hypothetically, let me finish. When I pointed out some